Hello and welcome back to Bray Workshop. With Mululi and Tolu. We are your host, and we have another episode of the mini series that we're running at the moment, which is like thriving during this economic storm that we're facing. So I hope everyone's keeping well. We're going to go straight into it, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
For those who haven't seen the previous one, we talked a little bit about what to do when we're facing the financial storm. We just really need to remember whose we are. And what else did we cover?
Can't remember most. I remember it mostly focused around thriving in this storm kind of thing.
Just remembering that, as we face these challenges, we know that it's not taking God by surprise. We talked a little bit about actually God is aware, He's not panicking. We don't have to panic as well. We have His nature, and even in these stormy times, we can look out for the opportunities because crises demand solutions. And oftentimes when we've got gifts and we've got skill sets, we've got knowledge and experiences, it's in challenging times that these abilities and knowledge and expertise begin to come out because it's time to solve problems. Problem solving, that's where creativity comes in, because creativity and problem solving actually go hand in hand. We have to be creative. So that's what we talked about. Today, what we're going to talk about, you tee us up on today's topic.
Yeah, again, we're going to kind of continue with the same thoughts and just bring it home and kind of look at the fact that these situations won't normally go away. So again, it's looking at what we do, how we respond to it. And
these situations don't go away. I want us to just talk a little bit about that and then you can move forward. So this is not uncommon in human history where there's a global shaking. Right? Please talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, these things tend to have, they're cyclic, you will have issues, but it just depends. I think it's the weight of it, the weightier they can be. You had issues, again, we looked at Joseph and the famine, then you had the issue of Elijah and the drought. So there's always going to be periods in our lives where we have that deficiency, where, there's just not enough. And the Bible says these things happen as examples for us. So we can feed off that information or that experience and relate it to our own situation. So what did they do? It's nothing new under the sun. What did they do? And how can we adapt it to our current crisis?
So it's cyclical. There's drought time and there's abundance. There's recession and there is, what's the opposite of recession? When there is boom. Boom and bust. Boom. So recession so we shouldn't be troubled by it because it is the actual cycle of life. Okay. So that's a very, very important message.
No, I was just going to say something that we discussed yesterday. We're talking about how Jesus points out to these things in Matthew 24. So he's been asked about things to come, and he talks about droughts and famines and war and rumors of war, and he's giving you all this really bleak, doom and gloom type prophecy. And then he makes a statement, says, don't be alarmed. So obviously this is addressed to those that know God. And for him to make such a statement, that means there's something he knows, some inside information that is available to the believer that allows you not to be alarmed in that situation. So we have that knowledge. It's we know that Jesus has said this stuff is coming. Inevitable is coming. So, how do we prep ourselves for these situations?
So we've got the cyclical aspect and the nature of these things. But I think also we're going to read Psalm 99 verse 1 and I think Hebrews as well, Hebrews 12, where in the spiritual realm, there is something that actually triggers a shaking of the world, right? So we've seen it in so many different stories as well, where, there's prosperity and there is and people are merry and they're enjoying, and maybe they take their eyes off the ball a little bit. Maybe they stop the things around the devotions that they had to their maker. They take him for granted and everything, and suddenly, those good times. There's this thing that has been going around in social media that bad times create good people, and then good people create good times, and then good times might then create bad people. And then
the whole thing
starts to go over. So there's this principle that maybe sometimes when we take our eyes off the ball, we don't give God his dues and everything. And then he wants to remind us who is in control, remind us what our true source. He is our true source. Our money is in our true source. Our economy, either private, personal economy, or even something like national economy, that's not our true source. He is a true source. So maybe we should go into that as well. So we've talked about the cyclical nature, but let's talk a little bit about the trembling, the shaking.
Psalm 99 verse 1. I think you should read it. You had the download. He had that revelation, so probably.
So I mean, I was reading this. I was doing like my morning devotion. Let's read it quickly. So Psalm 99 verse 1 from the KJV says that the Lord reigneth, and I think this is before we even move any further. it's that reminder that He reigns. He's the source.
Yeah.
He's the beginning. He's the end. He's our everything.
Yeah.
And if we begin to take our eyes off Him, off the Lord, now the Lord again means owner.
Yeah.
He's the architect.
Mm-hmm.
He's everything, the creator. He reigns. Even if He, doesn't impose Himself on us. The way we're used to rulers imposing.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Lord reigneth. So we must remember that. Let the people tremble. So if the people don't recognize the Lord, they don't acknowledge the Lord for who He is, that He reigns, there has to be a trembling. Because, the whole Bible talks about when people see a revelation of God, what do? They fall. They tremble. They lie on the floor. They put their faces to the ground because of how awesome He is. Right? So when that doesn't happen, He will get our attention.
Yeah.
And He has every right to, because He's the creator.
Okay.
So the Lord reigneth, let the people tremble. Then He goes on to say, He, the Lord, sitteth between the cherubims.
Yeah.
You know a lot about cherubims. We've done a lot of study about cherubims, right? So
Yeah.
it's heavenly beings,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
And they are the ones, they're mighty angelic beings.
Yeah.
So a class of angels. Very, very powerful. So so it sits between the cherubims. Let the earth be moved. So let the earth be moved in recognition of His awesomeness. You understand? And so maybe when we start to disregard Him, when we take our focus off Him, then there's a shaking.
There's a shaking. There's definitely a shaking. I kind of tied it to Hebrews chapter 12. So as soon as you kind of shared that to me, my mind drifted to a shaking, or rather a sieving process, where when you shake, you get rid of all the fluff and all the,
I like that word, fluff.
All the unnecessary bits.
Because there's a lot of fluff around this, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what does the fluff do? It just wants to take up space.
I know, it's got no value at
no
all.
value, no substance.
Nothing at all.
Just fluff.
Yeah.
And time is too precious. Life is too precious for fluff.
So Hebrews 12, 26 and 27 says,
Before you go there, let's talk about one or two fluffs.
Yeah.
Because we're on the topic of fluff.
Yeah.
What are some of the fluffs at the moment? Time wasters, time killers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's true.
Ideas, ideology that just doesn't hold any water.
Absolutely. Pointless.
Pointless.
Yeah. I remember when Paul was telling off, was it Timothy? In Timothy, where he says, make sure the women don't just sit there talking about old fables, pointless, unnecessary, energy drainers, stuff that just doesn't constitute life.
Gossip.
Yeah.
Now, everyone gossips. Yeah. Right? Men gossip, women gossip, everyone gossips. Well, we need to be diligent. We need to be custodians of our time as well, isn't it? So that's the reason why it's so important to eradicate all the fluff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So Hebrews 12, 26, 27 says, one more time, I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. The words once more indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is created things, so that what cannot be shaken will remain. Again, you see, the whole trembling thing is about refinement. It's about sieving. It's getting the stuff that cannot be, sustained to be removed from our lives. And, Jesus continues along this path in Revelation 3, where He says, wake up, strengthen the things that remain and are about to die. And, I kind of tied it to, like you said, the fluff, the unnecessary friendships, sieved away, bad relationships, purged away, time wasters gone. Then we focus on the things that remain. So good relationships, make sure, you build on that. So things that are sustainable through the shaking is what we focus on.
Finding truth around us, good relationships, finding the truth about who we are as human beings, because even our identity is under a lot of attack right now. There's men fighting women, there's a feminist movement, and we won't even go down that road right now. We sympathize with all the groups out there. Absolutely every group has something to say, but many a times the fighting, I think, is a distraction from finding truth.
Yeah.
When we get preoccupied with all the fighting, then it takes us away from seeking the truth about who our true identity and our true purpose of being here on this earth.
Reminds me of what you were quoting last week. So many other plans in a man's heart, but it's, what does the rap say? But it's the Lord's purposes that
will prevail.
Yeah.
It's the Lord's plans that will prevail.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. All the
At
way.
the end of the day.
Yeah. And the end of it is death. There's another one. So,
there's a way that seems right to a person. There's a way that seems right to a person, but at the end of the road, the end of it leads to disaster, destruction.
So this is the fluff, That's the stuff that doesn't amount to anything, that needs to be kind of eradicated from our lives. The things that are not about the life of God, the life of Christ, just need to go. Just need to focus on the right things.
And I think now, for our viewers, we are still talking about thriving in the financial crisis.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why we're tackling this is when we're just trying to make sure that we establish the importance of absolute focus. If we are going to thrive, we need to be focused on what it is that we need to do to put in place so that we can thrive. Because those fluff and those distractions will always want to break our focus from what's right. I read a book very recently, and I'll let you carry on in a minute. And the author was talking about the opposite of distraction. You would think the opposite of distraction is focus. Well, he says, no, it's not focus. I can't remember the title of the book, but it has to do with productivity. He says the opposite of distraction is actually traction. So the this is obviously pulling you away from traction. And traction is knowing what to do and doing what you need to do and making progress. Traction. Traction. Because you could focus, but it doesn't necessarily mean you've got traction. You can focus on something and not actually be taking the necessary action. Because there's action in traction. So distraction is stopping you from taking the right action. And so in the times of crisis like this, we must make sure that all of our action is by design to give us the traction to move forward and then to thrive.
True.
So we're still on the totopic, but anyway, we've been talking about the importance of staying focused and getting the fluff out and be really focused on the substance,
on the right things. Because it reminds me of John chapter 6, where Jesus is he's just fed the 5,000, as it were, and the people come looking for him. They're literally streaming for him, and then disciples are with him. Then he starts to teach them the bread of life. This is tantamount to cannibalism. Jesus is saying, you have to eat me, I
remember that one. Eat my flesh and then you drink my blood. And you were like, what?
We're not receiving this.
And they started to leave, didn't they?
They did. So again,
some started to leave.
You definitely, some disciples left him, and then when Peter said, there's a way can we go, you have the words of life.
Where are we going?
There's always going to be a shaking. There's going to be things that are tough for others to comprehend. And the things that remain are the things that need to be strengthened. So Jesus would focus on the 12, the people that stayed with him, the disciples that needed more investment. And it's the same thing. When we get the shaking, all these financial ideas that have amounted to nothing need to go. And you need to focus, strengthen the things that remain. So again, this shaking is for our benefit.
I love that example where there was a shaking. It's a different kind of shaking. And you could see those who were there for the bread, what was in it for them, and they didn't want to go deeper into the substance of what Christ was, who he was. If they saw him do those miracles, he healed and he fed people thousands, and now he's saying, I want you to eat my body and I want you to drink my blood. And they're thinking, oh no, we can't be doing this. I said, you're right. He wanted to remove all the superficial surface. Do you know what I mean?
And we get that. That's part of our life as well. That's relationships, friends, which won't stand by you when the hard times come. That is fluff for you. Just leave it, let it go. Financial ideas, which, financial habits, which are not beneficial to you. Just let it go and pick up habits. So the things that remain once we've been shaken are the things we strengthen, we fortify them, make them stronger, make them harder. That's what God wants us to remain.
Wow. That's a fantastic perspective right now for us, because whatever it is that we're going through, we need to see from the eyes of the Lord.
Amen.
And we must always remember that every storm, every challenge, all these things we're talking about, there's God's love somewhere in there. God's love, God's plan to just make us better.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Very good. So I hope that's an encouraging message to someone out there. When you watch the news, I don't watch as much of the news, but there's a lot of gloom and doom there. But in the midst of all that, we must remember that God is right there in the middle. The Lord Jesus is right there in the middle, saying, "Don't worry." You talked about Elijah earlier on. Right in the middle of the famine, he heard clearly what God wanted him to do, and he navigated the toughest situation and came out with such an amazing victory. You said all these things are written for our benefits, so we should be taking all these lessons and applying them.
I saw another example of this shaking where Jesus himself is he asked John to write letters to the 7 churches, and in each church there's specific issues, but he'll mention things like, he'll mention the good as well as the bad. But at the end of it all, he says some of you will be thrown into prison, and he talks about some of you sitting where Satan is, and he's mentioning issues which are shaken, which are, they sound gloomy, but he says at the end of it all, he calls it to him who overcomes. He talks about the victor's crown, things like. So when the shaking comes, who's left standing? Absolutely. You have to make sure that it says he who stands to the end will be saved. Shaking comes to make sure we're upright, we're standing as well. We go through, we come out the other end.
Absolutely. I think we said something earlier on this morning when we met in the group about how we were born into the world and discovered that, look, we didn't ask for the battle.
No.
We didn't start the fight. We didn't create a lot of the mess in the world,
Yeah.
but we were plunged right into it.
Right.
So what's the best response? Find what you need to do.
Yeah,
we need
amen.
to find what we need to do while we're here,
Yeah.
which is like seeking the truth. And of course, Jesus has already told us that he is the light, you know, and that if we follow him, we'll not walk in darkness. Right? So we come into the world. If we have the light of the world, who is Jesus Christ, where is that? It's in John chapter 8, verse 12. When we have the light, who is Christ, then, you know, whatever it is that we're doing, so as we're journeying through life, then, you know, we've got illumination, we've got, you know, light, you know, in the dark.
Yeah.
We know exactly what we need to do. So this shaking business is so important that we see it from God's perspective.
Yeah. Exactly.
Otherwise, we lose heart.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, should we go into this now, or should we go into the next episode where we talk about why we listen to God, how we listen to God, and when we listen?
That's our
to
next
God?
topic.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll do that there.
Yeah.
We'll do that there because I think we need to give that plenty of
time as well,
and break it down very, very importantly in a very succinct way. Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. So that is the hearing from the Lord, isn't it?
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, we'll do that. Hearing from the Lord. Yes. Okay. Cool. So let's do a quick recap. So we've talked specifically about, you know, the storm is cyclical.
Yeah.
We see that throughout history. The whole history of mankind, right?
Yeah.
It's always been that. But we've also said, look, let's peek and look at it from God's perspective, from a spiritual point of view, because God's given us that perspective, you know. And that's the beauty of actually following Jesus Christ, because you get the Creator's perspective. Yeah. So God's perspective is that from time to time, Hebrews said something once more. So there's a timing element to it, where every so often there'll be a little bit of sifting, you know. So we can get off all the fluff out of the way, and then we can have the substance there. Okay, so we've talked about the cyclical nature. We've looked at God's sort of like perspective, and all we're saying is that while we're going through, the last time we talked about opportunities and then bringing solution. But while we do know that, we must have this in the back of our minds. Why is this happening? It's a shaking, it's a sifting. God is aware, and God will see us through.
Yeah,
very good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any last words before we wrap up today?
Not in particular, but again, the emphasis on the fact that we're forewarned. So we have, you know, we've got inside information on this as Christians, and this allows us to prepare ourselves adequately for that situation, which is pending. It's inevitable, it's coming. So it's how we respond to it. Yeah.
Wow. And you said you didn't have a final word. We are forewarned. That's a very, very powerful statement. When we get on an airplane, right? I don't know if this is a great analogy, but, you know, there's this safety announcement at the beginning, and you're being forewarned just in case. If you have turbulence, this is what you should do. Be ready for the turbulence. Right, take your seat and sit down. And if there's no, if the cabin pressure drops, we've got you. So you are forewarned. And so what we're saying is that, you know, these things shouldn't knock our confidence. No. It shouldn't make us to feel anxious. You know, we shouldn't start panicking because, like you said, we are forewarned.
Amen.
Praise God.
Don't be alarmed.
Don't be alarmed. Fantastic. Jesus says he's the Prince of Peace, and so he wants us to always have peace in the middle of anything at all. Storms, economic crisis, whatever it is, just maintain your peace, because Christ paid a huge price.
Yeah, he did.
For our peace. Praise God. Yeah. Thank you for listening. And as always, please, if you found this useful, share it with people. Subscribe, and what else?
Like,
comment. Please comment.
Yeah,
please comment, because when we hear from you, then we're able to get a little bit more materials. We know what people really want to hear about, and then we can address those topics. But thank you. Stay blessed, and bye for now. Until next time.
Yeah, bye.